Namaste, and welcome to Indigenous Projects and Events Speakers and Facilitators Bureau. I'm Natasha Delany, and I'm the founder of Indigenous Projects and Events. It is my honor to introduce one of the incredible speakers that we are proud to represent in our Speakers and Facilitators Bureau. Today, we are going to be speaking and featuring Makayla Mantla, who is a proud Diné woman from Bechiko First Nation in Treaty 11 territory. Makayla is a she just explained to me prior to the video that she is going into her fourth year and is an honors nursing student at the University of Alberta. Makayla serves as the Director of Indigenous Health and Advocacy for the Canadian Nursing Students Association and is a passionate motivational speaker. We recently had her at the Indigirize pitch night that happened in May, and she is such an amazing speaker and she is doing some amazing things. Her journey is one of resilience and transformation. Growing up, Makayla believed the false narrative that Indigenous people couldn't excel in higher education. Today, she not only stands as proof that we can, she's inspiring the next generation to step into healthcare, challenge discrimination, and lead in the communities that they serve. Makayla has shared the stage with Canada's Chief Nursing Officer, Lee Chapman, and has spoken at major conferences all across Canada and has delivered impactful talks to schools, community organizations, and healthcare audiences. Makayla's mission is to create safer, more inclusive healthcare spaces for Indigenous people and to motivate youth to dream bigger and to dream bigger than the limitations that sometimes we place on ourselves. We are honored to have Makayla in our Indigenous Speakers and Facilitators Bureau and to share her voice with audiences who are ready to be inspired. So without further ado, here is Makayla. Hi, Makayla.
Hello, thank you so much for having me here with you today.
Thank you so much for being here. I know you've been so busy. You just got back from, where did you just get back from again?
Yeah, so I recently got back from Niagara Falls in Finland for the month of June for a few weeks.
Yeah, and what were you doing there?
Yeah, so other than, so I was the Director of Indigenous Health and Advocacy for the CNSA, and that was from 2024 to 2025. And from that opportunity, I was invited by the president of the Canadian Federation of Nurses Union to go to Niagara Falls to become part of their Nursing Indigenous Health Advisory Committee. So I was able to see their organization give an apology to Indigenous peoples, and I was so thankful. I think I was the only Indigenous nursing student part of it.
Wow.
And yeah, it was amazing.
That is extraordinary. And that was your first time out of Canada.
Oh, and then right after, yes, I went to Finland for the first time, and I was able to leave Canada. I attended the International Council of Nurses Conference, and it was a wonderful opportunity.
I love that. So, Makayla, your journey into motivational speaking is deeply rooted in your lived experiences. Can you share the moment that you first realized your story had the power to inspire others?
Yes, I will never forget the first time I ever got on stage, and it was back in January 2024 when I went to my first conference for the Canadian Nursing Student Association. And I remember I wasn't planning to run for the director role at the time, for the Indigenous role.
Wow.
And I remember I ran into one man and he said, "Makayla, if not you, then who?" So I remember I signed up very last minute, and like the day of, I found out I had to give a speech. And I remember I was very nervous, extremely nervous, because I grew up really shy. So me being a public speaker now, I'm really glad that I moved away from that. But I'll never forget my very first speech before I went on stage. I was so incredibly nervous, but then I remembered that dream I had really deep down as a young child, where I wanted to fix the Indigenous community or First Nations community where my family is from, or I thought how I would love to be a motivational speaker to help Indigenous people. And I realized that I could help so many more people because there's not a lot of Indigenous speakers. I know we have a lot of elders and speakers, which is amazing, but there's not a lot of younger people to help reach the youth. And I realized that I just want to help more youth, more Indigenous people.
Yeah, so growing up in Bechiko, right? Bechiko First Nation, how was that for you? Like, what did that look like?
I remember growing up, because I believe I grew up there until I was about 5 years old or so. But and my family and I, we moved to Yellowknife, which was the major city, only an hour away. But I remember growing up in that Bechiko Clecho community that the roads were not paved. There's no like consistent running water, so we had to get water delivered to each home through like the water tank. And I just remember being surrounded by poverty, surrounded by Indigenous people not doing well or not leaving that community and not going after education. And seeing that as a young child, I grew up thinking like that could not be me. And for me and my immediate family of 7, like I'm the first person in my family of 7 to get an education.
So you have 7 siblings? Like you're the
sorry,
seventh?
four younger siblings and then my parents.
Okay, got it. Yeah. So for those that might not know where Bechiko is, you said it's an hour from Yellowknife. So it's a northern community?
Yes, in the Northwest Territories.
Okay. Yeah. So you moved from there when you were 5?
Yes, to Yellowknife, and then I think moved to Edmonton in about 2008 for better quality of life and education.
2008?
Yes.
So what was the reasoning for moving from Bechiko?
I remember like my mom, she just wanted us to have a better quality of life and kind of make that choice to leave that community and to see what we could become and what a good quality of life can mean leaving the community.
Yeah, I totally resonate with those dreams as a young Indigenous girl, of wanting to be on stage and wanting to speak. Because you're right, like growing up, and I'm not sure how old you are, but I'm 38. Like growing up, there was not very many. There was no Ashley Calling Bowl, right? There was no Crystal Lightning. Like the only representation that I saw on TV was, the good Indian or the bad Indian in the Westerns, right? And so now it's amazing how much things have shifted and how many more opportunities there are for us. But yeah, just growing up, just wanting more, but not quite sure if that was possible for us because I'd never seen anybody, do that. And then also growing up in foster care in a white home, like it just wasn't a thing, right? And so I don't know if that was kind of like your similar experience where you didn't see that, and that wasn't the experience for you in terms of being encouraged and motivated to step into the starlight or the in front of the microphone, I guess.
And I guess something else I will mention as well is, growing up in that community, the Indigenous community, I remember I grew up without learning my language or culture. And even now I struggle with that as well. But I think that just came from feeling embarrassed and ashamed to be Indigenous. And that carried that followed me my entire life until maybe my mid or late 20s. And I just turned 31 recently as well. And I also realized that me feeling embarrassed or ashamed, that realization is, I think it's a direct result from the colonization and the residential school system. And, I'm really glad that I didn't learn my language and culture. And now I'm proud to be Indigenous and First Nations, and I just want to help the youth realize, we grew up a certain way or similar, but we can slowly be proud to be who we are, and we can heal together.
Yeah. So in your 20s, what was the turning point where you started to, like, first of all, identify that there was shame and a loss of identity as an Indigenous woman, and yeah, what was the turning point? Was there an experience or?
I think I know I graduated high school in 2012, and for 7 years I couldn't afford to go back to school or think about it. But I think the biggest thing is when my mom told me, Makayla, you have to go back to school, you have to upgrade and get an education. And I told her, Mom, and I was crying. I said, Mom, I can't. I'm Indigenous. I'm not smart. And that mindset followed me forever. And I remember when I was upgrading, I thought my mindset shifted where I developed a positive mindset. I worked on character, and I realized that, what, I'm Indigenous, I'm smart, I'm strong, I belong here. And I think that was the biggest thing when I was feeling proud to say, what, I am Indigenous. And that's something I couldn't say my entire life.
Mm-hmm. I feel like that is just something that resonates with so many of us. It's a powerful story, and it's a powerful message for not just Indigenous youth, but for all of us, especially those that are our age and older as well, right? Because I feel like so many of us have had that same experience and those same feelings and that same shame, and still experience that shame today, right? Especially those that are on reserve, and they don't realize it. So you've spoken alongside Canada's Chief Nursing Officer, and at high profile conferences. So what has it been like stepping into these spaces as an Indigenous nursing student and speaker?
I will never forget the first time I gave my first speech with Lee Chapman, Chief Nursing Officer of Canada, and of course, I was nervous before it went, but I thought, wow, I have this amazing opportunity to help raise awareness that there are Indigenous nursing students, there are Indigenous people that we need help, and it led to realizing that there is still racism and discrimination, like in the education system and the healthcare system. And I think it was just amazing because that's my purpose and goal, is not just to help share my own personal story and help inspire Indigenous youth, Indigenous people, but help raise awareness to the non-Indigenous population. And I'm so grateful for that.
How many people was at that conference did you speak in front of?
I think at my very first conference, maybe a few hundred. Mm-hmm. And I think what I like to do now is when I do speak at conferences or events, I always like to ask people if they could raise their hand to see, if they're Indigenous, just to see that percentage of who's attending.
So that very first speaking event, you spoke in front of 300 to 400 people. That's crazy.
And I remember my very first speech ever for the CNSA. I remember there was an Indigenous elder on the first night, and she actually asked everyone, can you please raise your hand if you're Indigenous? And on the very first night, I was the only one who raised my hand, and it was representing, like students across Canada. And I thought, wow. And that just made me realize that the position I'm in, not just being an Indigenous nursing student, but a motivational speaker, is so important to help other people realize that they too can become more, and follow their dreams.
Yeah, for sure. I spoke in front of, like, my first speaking opportunity, I spoke in front of maybe like a group of 6 women, and I was terrified. I couldn't imagine my first opportunity being in front of 300 to 400 people. That's amazing. So you said growing up, you didn't believe Indigenous people were smart or incapable of going to university. So how did you begin to unlearn that belief? And what would you say now to your younger self?
Oh wow! I think yeah, the biggest thing was my mindset shifted from that negative mindset, thinking I'm not smart, I'm Indigenous, I can't do it. To, you know what? It took me, I think, a year and a half to upgrade all my high school classes to get into the nursing program. And I think the biggest thing I would tell my younger self is, you know, the best way I could describe it is, it doesn't matter the family you have, you don't have, the friends that support you or don't, if you have all the finances, is that just think about, well, I guess the question I would like to ask is, where is the richest place on earth? I believe the richest place on earth is the graveyard, the cemetery, because so many people live their life without pursuing their dreams. And I realized that I don't want to become that person. So I realized my dream is to become an Indigenous registered nurse, a motivational speaker. How can I help that next person? And for me, I know nursing and speaking is my gift because I feel like crying, and that's just what I know what I'm meant to do with my life. And once you find out what you're meant to do, you'll follow that path, regardless if it's nursing or not. And I think I would tell my younger self is, you know what, it's time, pick yourself up. You're Indigenous, you're strong, you belong here, you belong in the Canadian healthcare system, because there needs to be more people like you and me helping each other. And I realized that, you know what, I don't know my language or culture very well, but I look forward to learning it and being more proud to be who I am so I could help that next person.
Yeah. Um, so one of your biggest dreams is to open your own Indigenous healthcare practice in Edmonton, I believe. So, what would that space look like and feel like for the people walking through its doors? What is the
Oh,
vision?
oh wow. I think because I know I'm going into my fourth year of nursing, and I've had a lot of people say, "Oh, Makayla, what are you going to do? Are you going to do more education, maybe PhD?" And I have thought about either more education. There's like medical school. And I understand if I do the nurse practitioner route, you have the option to open your own healthcare practice. And then I thought, wow, like maybe I could be the first Indigenous woman in Edmonton to do that. And the reason behind it is, to create a legacy for my family's last name, but also a legacy that can help more Indigenous people. And I think that would be a dream one day, just to help more Indigenous people, that they would feel safe if they don't feel safe going to the main hospitals, or in fear of like racism and discrimination, or not getting treatment in the ER waiting room. I think what I would want for Indigenous patients to walk in is to feel like they belong, they feel welcomed,
Mm,
and they know that they will get treated, they will get seen, or get the help that they needed, because I think Indigenous people deserve to be seen, heard, and included for all the years that they were not in every aspect.
yeah. So you mentioned that you're hoping to potentially go further in your educational journey. What were you thinking?
I think in regards to my educational journey, I think I know for sure, like I want to follow my first dream, and I would love to work with newborn babies. I would
Mm,
love to be an Indigenous NICU nurse, NICU and postpartum, and also because when you work in the hospital or in those areas, there's not a lot of Indigenous NICU nurses.
mhm.
And I want to also be that role model to show that, we can specialize, we can do more than just a registered nurse, and kind of follow that dream. So I guess I look forward to what I do and what I can become and what direction I go in. And I think also the best thing I could do is help more Indigenous people realize that they can do this too.
Mhm. So why was that the original dream to work with newborns?
I guess the best way I could describe it is, so like right now, I know nursing is my dream, because when I imagine myself walking across the stage at graduation, I feel like crying.
Mhm.
And right now, if I thought about it, I would cry. So that's how I know what I'm meant to do with my life. And I know I want to work with newborn babies because I want to have a job that I feel a purpose and fulfilled. And I'm so grateful to go to, regardless of life and the bills and what happens. But I know I want to follow that first dream. And I hope other people will follow their dreams as well.
Yeah, and this is the second time that you've mentioned that whenever you feel like you want to cry, that's your kind of signal that that's what you're meant to do. Can you elaborate on that for us a little bit?
Yes, of course. And I remember, actually, I remember growing up in the community. I even told my parents, like when I was a young girl, oh, I want to be a nurse. And at the time, my mom was like, or my parents were saying, oh, we don't think you're going to like it. Nurses have to do gross things. Like you won't enjoy it. And I never thought about it. And I remember when I was upgrading my high school classes, I remember my parents suggested, oh, go into business. You'll get a job really quick. You'll make money. And I thought, if I have to upgrade everything, what do I really want to do? And I remember that dream about nursing. And yeah, even right now, when I think about graduating from nursing, walking across the stage, I feel emotional. I feel like crying, even right now. And I think to get my degree, it usually takes 4 years, but
Mhm,
I
mhm,
failed one of my first year nursing classes, and it's going to take me a total of 6 years to get my education.
mhm,
And I just know that, if I fail a class in my fourth year, I pray and hope not. I will not give up because that's my dream, that's my purpose. And just like when I think about public speaking and being a motivational speaker, I get emotional just thinking about I want to help that next Indigenous person find their dream, have that same sense of purpose for their life,
mhm,
find their gift. Because once they find that, whether it's, healthcare related, education, becoming a lawyer, perhaps opening an Indigenous owned business in Edmonton, once they find their gift, their purpose, their dream, and the work that they do, the time it will take, it won't matter because they found that purpose.
mhm.
And something else I hope to do in my free time or when I'm done nursing school as well is I want to look back at how to give back to the Indigenous homeless population. How can I create some kind of program where I can give back as well and help, because I want my life to be more than myself, my education, my family, but what about the Indigenous homeless population? And that's also the purpose with me doing public speaking too, is helping other people. Let's look at programs and how can we give back.
Yeah. In terms of like you talking about just growing up and not feeling like you were smart enough to pursue your education, um, again, that's something that I totally resonate and I did resonate with and didn't. I also didn't believe that I was smart enough to complete my schooling, and I know the first because did my first year of business in my early 20s, and because of that same reason where I didn't think I was smart, I self-sabotaged and I quit. And so when I returned in my early 30s, I was able to thankfully still return for my second year. But my first paper, I cried. And it took me so long to actually do that paper. I had to smudge. I had to like ask creator to help me because I did not think that I could do it. And it was this a big dramatic scene, of like, screaming and just praying for the words to write down on this paper. And then I think maybe I handed it in like a second before the due date, the time, and I got it back and I passed. And it was like, oh, maybe I can do this, maybe it's possible, right? And I swear for like the first 2-3 years, every single time I had that experience where I'm like, I can't do this, and I'm like procrastinating and waiting until the very last minute to submit something. And I got better and better over a period of time. But yeah, I just totally resonate with that experience of not believing that I'm smart because I'm Indigenous, right? And again, we didn't see these type of people, or for me, like I wasn't told about them being raised in foster care. I was not told about Indigenous people doing degrees and going to school. I was taught about, my alcoholic uncle on the side of the road, right? So many of your speeches center around education and representation. So what message do you hope Indigenous youth carry with them after hearing you speak?
I think a message I would want to share with anyone, everyone, Indigenous youth, and after speaking at my first high school last September, I think I just get so excited when I meet Indigenous youth. And I guess to answer your question from earlier is like what I would tell my younger self as well. I just think if I had the mindset I had now when I was younger, I would have accomplished so much more. I would have maybe done medical school. I would have maybe opened my own practice. Maybe I could have worked as like a professor teaching that next Indigenous generation. I could have opened my Indigenous nonprofit to help the Indigenous homeless population. I believe if I had my mindset now when I was younger, I would have accomplished so much more. But thinking about it, I am so grateful that I grew up surrounded by poverty. I grew up without having that language or culture. I'm so grateful that I failed my first year nursing class, or it took me like more than 7 years to get back into the education system. And I'm so glad I'm 31 going into my fourth year nursing, because my goal is to help inspire Indigenous youth, and that, no matter what age you are, you can go back to school, you can get your education. Don't let anyone tell you you're too young, you're too old, that you don't have the financial resources or the support, because you can. You follow that dream and purpose and gift for your life, and however long it takes, you'll get there. And you always be proud to be who you are, from whatever Indigenous First Nations community you're from. And you know what? If you don't know your language or culture, that's okay. You can be proud to be who you are, and you can help me. And let's go on this journey together to heal together.
Yeah, it's like no matter if you know your language or your culture, if that's something that you're wishing to learn and understand, then definitely pursue it. But you're still Indigenous, right? Like you're still Indigenous, and I think that is a powerful message to share with youth and your younger self and other Indigenous people. So you're open about the fact that you didn't grow up learning your language and culture. So how do you navigate carrying your identity and representing others who feel the same disconnection?
For me, I think the best way I could describe that would be, to no longer be ashamed to be who you are. Don't feel embarrassed. And it's a journey. It won't happen overnight. And for me, I'm still learning how to accept who I am, and even to like dress and look Indigenous. I think I only tried on my first Indigenous pair of earrings in November, and it was actually a very hard thing for me, where I started crying because I never wanted to look Indigenous, even with like how I would dress or how would I appear. But I realized that as I go forward, that's going to be important, and I look forward to sharing that, where I can dress and look more Indigenous, and that says, you know what, I'm proud, and we can be proud together.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that for you specifically, because the area in which you're choosing to work, you're the representation. You're like the tiny little representation in that industry. And so, yeah, I'm happy to hear that, you're taking more pride in like being able to wear beaded jewelry. And this is actually something that I've been been questioning myself about, because I've been wearing Indigenous jewelry. Like, I got sober about 6 years ago and started practicing ceremony and learning culture, and I wear Indigenous jewelry. And then I'm like, well, like, even if I don't wear Indigenous jewelry, I'm still Indigenous, like, we don't need to brand ourselves in that way if we don't need to, because we are still Indigenous. We still carry that knowledge and that resilience and all of those amazing gifts that our ancestors have passed on to us. Like, it still lives in us and through us. So what is next for you as a speaker and a future nurse? And are there any upcoming projects, dreams, or stages that you're aiming for?
Yes, and I think in regards to what's coming up, yeah, it's actually very exciting. So in September, I'm planning to give a speech at the high school I graduated from in 2012.
Oh, full circle moment.
Yes, and I'm so excited, and I know that every year I just want to aim for new goals. And I guess before I continue too, like how I met Chief Nursing Officer of Canada, I remember like I just walked up to her, introduced myself, and that's how I got this opportunity, or how I went to Finland, or how I got this speaking opportunity in September for another high school is I sent an email, and that's how I got any of my opportunities, because I believe that the worst thing someone could say is no.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's so courageous of you, and like making the way, right? Making the way for yourself, and kind of like not taking no as an answer, right? Like, even if you do get a no, like, what's the next thing?
Exactly. And I guess even for this past July, it was very amazing news, but I even sent an email out to APTN just sharing my articles I had written about me from the University of Alberta, or what I'm doing in my free time. And so APTN reached out and they wrote an article about me, and it was amazing. And then the next day after the APTN article was released, I got my first CBC live radio interview, and that was just, I couldn't believe it. It was life-changing, and I was so grateful, because my purpose is just to help reach more Indigenous people and help to inspire.
Well, I'm so proud of you for just having the courage, right, to go after everything that you want and deserve. You're totally worthy, no matter what. And I'm so grateful and thankful that you were able to join us today. Tell us, where can people find you? I know they can find you on our website under the Speakers and Facilitators Bureau, but where else can they find you?
Oh, yes. So you can find me on, the Speakers Bureau, but also on LinkedIn. Yeah, just Makayla Mantla, and I guess also Instagram, I guess, for anyone else as well. Yes.
Okay, awesome. And we will have those links in the show notes for everybody. I want to thank you again for joining us today, Makayla. And if you are also wanting to book Makayla, please reach out to us at admin@indigenousprojectsandevents.com. I hope you have the best week and the best day. And thank you again.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. I want to say thank you in my Indigenous Diné Dagurb language, Masicho.
Masicho.